Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank the witnesses for your testimony today. Before I forget, I want to do it right up front, or I almost certainly will. I want to place into the record without objection a letter from the North Dakota Industrial Commission that represents their comments on this rule. The Industrial Commission of North Dakota is made up of 3 separate elected officials who come together on the commission. They are the Governor, the Attorney General, and the Commissioner of Agriculture. So I'd like to place that in the record. And
without objections, ordered.
Before I speak about what the commission has written about, I am very pleased to know that Mr. Hawkins, that the Natural Resource Defense Council supports interstate pipelines, international pipelines even. Your reference to the CO2 line from the Dakota Gasification Facility in North Dakota, which I helped cite when I was on the Public Service Commission, to Weyburn, Canada, for enhanced oil recovery. By the way, when we cited it, we had a hearing and not a single person showed up. That's the way it is in North Dakota with good ideas. And so however, your comment that pipelining is easy, I have to take some exception with. If building international and interstate pipelines was easy, we'd have a lot more of them right now. We would have...
Like Keystone.
Yeah, for example. By the way, Chairman Hall, North Dakota's Attorney General is engaged so far in 12 separate lawsuits against their federal government, the EPA. In the comments in the Industrial Commission writes, that North Dakota really focuses on this issue of CO2 as an asset. It's an asset. It's a resource. The EPA treats it as waste. Same with the pore space. We treat it as an asset. The EPA treats it as waste, and consequently, there's tremendous regulatory confusion as a result. And so I know it might be a little redundant, but I want to flesh this out even a little further. Maybe, Mr. Trout, you could help me with this. Mr. Hilton made reference to it earlier. Could you describe the requirement that EOR operators, have to operate under differently than, say traditional sequestration? Maybe flesh that difference out a little bit for us so that I have a better scientific understanding. And why should it be that way if you think it should, or why it shouldn't?
The difference between the reporting requirements under the greenhouse gas mandatory reporting requirement is under subpart RR, that's for geologic storage or sequestration. There's a sort of a burden of proof that you have to do a mass balance on the CO2 that you put into the ground. You have to ensure, or at least look at through a monitoring program, that it isn't coming back up to the surface. Mm-hmm. Under subpart UU, it's the burden of proof is frankly not even there. It's really just monitoring the CO2 that goes into the field, as well as fugitive emissions from your operations or facilities. So there isn't the same level of reporting that's required, and certainly monitoring.
Maybe, and this could be for all of the panelists, because there was reference earlier to previous rules and previous technological advancements. I think mercury was specified. I think some of the others, maybe SOx, NOx. Is the commercially available, or perhaps even the standard of adequate demonstration of technology equal in this case in carbon capture as it was then with mercury and others? Anybody or all of you?
Congressman, I really address that. The answer is we were doing the technologies required, either not in this country or in other industries, that everything that was required, that's been required under the Clean Air Act, except this. I mean, as I pointed out, we did scrubbers. The first scrubbers were at Battersea and Bankside in London, and they were there to protect the erosion of all of the buildings there. So we built these things for years. And as I said, I worked on my first one before the Clean Air Act existed. So, I mean, it's, we've done these things. NOx reduction was developed in Japan, not here, but the technology was there. And I know because my company was a licensee of those companies. And so this is the first time we're dealing with something where we have nothing out there to show. And we're running down a path where Europe is not pushing this issue. China's not pushing this issue. We're alone out here. And so the technology's got to be developed here. You know, so I think, this is the first issue where we haven't had the ability to, like in waste to energy, where we had full-scale plants on mercury in the 80s.
Well, I think I look forward to the day when the technology does catch up, because I'd love to burn more than, that 30 million barrels of, or 30 million tons of coal we burn in North Dakota every year. We have an 800-year supply of. So I'd like to burn it for 800 years and use it to get even more oil out of the ground. That's a noble goal. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. McCabe, for your testimony, for being with us, and for enduring this long morning into the afternoon. There was some confusion I sensed when Chairman Hall asked about current use or current demonstrations of CCS. How many coal plants use carbon capture now, coal-fired electricity plants?
So I actually don't add these up. Do we have a number?
Can you name some? Could you name some?
Yep. So the Warrior Run power plant, the Shady Point power plant. There is a power plant in Germany called the Vattenfall-Schwarz power plant.
Do you know what the average size or how many megawatts they produce?
I don't have that information with me, Congressman, but we can get it for you.
Okay, because I have to be honest now. I'm gonna respect the ranking members who has very effectively tried to discern the difference between adequate demonstration and commercially available. And yet, without something being commercially available, I don't know how you demonstrate it. In other words, if it's not being done at a commercial level, at a level that would be equivalent to what we're asking here, or what we're suggesting in terms of new power plants, it's hard for me to comprehend how it's been, quote, adequately demonstrated. But I respect the difference. How are we going to determine whether something's adequately demonstrated if it's not commercially deployed at the scales that we're applying the rule to?
Right. Well, I think that is the debate that's concerning the committee here. The Clean Air Act does not use the term commercially available. It uses the term adequately demonstrated. And as Congresswoman Bonamici cited some of the history of that section and the way it's been applied, it was clear that Congress intended for this provision to put the United States on the forefront of developing technologies. And so it is not an expectation that technology be in widespread use, and that's been clearly demonstrated over the years.
But in the most recent proposal, you actually do state that carbon dioxide emissions from new power plants or from CCS has not been implemented, and that we believe there's insufficient information to make a determination. These are quotes from the EPA's proposed rules regarding technical feasibility. It seems to me that the same exact thing applies here to coal, that if it's not been done with CCS or with combined cycle, it's not been done with coal. Why the difference?
Well, there is a difference. There's a difference in the information that's available, and there's a significant difference in the ways in which these technologies are deployed and are being used in coal versus natural gas situations. There are also technical differences between the operations of those plants, where we do not have information on the natural gas side that we do on the coal side, and that's the basis of our proposal.
As you know, in order for this, if we had the carbon capture technology, and if it was adequately demonstrated and it became commercially available and it was economically feasible to do it and to meet the growing demand. And by the way, in North Dakota, where I live and where I was once a regulator, we have a demand of over 2,000 megawatts right now that's being unmet to meet the growing economy that we have as a result of our more reasonable regulatory touch, I might add. But the EPA has specifically cited the North Dakota to Weyburn CO2 pipeline from the the Synfuels plant, Great Plains Synfuels plant, which I was just at a week ago Friday with the administrator.
Yep.
We had a very good meeting there. But that requires an international pipeline. You perhaps heard me discuss it earlier today. This is day 2,000 of the Keystone XL pipeline's review process, is the EPA, which the EPA has largely criticized and opposed, continues to throw up sort of barriers, I guess. Is EPA prepared to, support CO2 pipelines all over the country and perhaps even across international lines?
There are CO2 pipelines across the country, and
I'm very familiar. I've studied.
And we believe that that's an important part of moving this technology forward and putting in place things that will be able to take carbon dioxide out of the air.
I just hope the EPA is this cooperative when it actually comes time to siting some of these CO2 pipelines, should we need to get them to market. Also, I'm just going to wrap up, Mr. Chairman, by saying that the EPA also notes that natural gas prices and have claimed natural gas prices have been the real determining factor in the marketplace. And yet we are coming off of a winter where PJM actually had to seek relief from FERC from its $1,000 per megawatt hour price cap because natural gas prices spiked as a result of a cold winter. It's a very volatile fuel. I support it, but I don't think we should displace coal with it.